On today's episode,
you have taught me so much by the way you've responded to your losses.
UFC superstar Kenny Florian.
There is nothing great that happens without struggle.
Why abandoning law school
I lived a life that was very safe, but I wasn't really living.
and facing his fears in the cage
There is a guy, he's trying to punch you and kick you in the face.
accomplished his true quest in life.
There is a step-by-step process to achieve anything.
Inside Quest starts right now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Inside Quest, where we find people that have done incredible stuff with their life and try to get them to boil it down for us and give us those lessons that we can apply to our own lives. We've got somebody with us today that is absolutely incredible. I was thinking about him this morning when I was in the gym. He is Kenny Kenflo Florian, badass at Jujitsu, and he's got dangerous elbows. That's a pretty killer introduction, Kenny, I've got to say. I wish somebody would sum me up like that. You've had 16 wins, 6 losses, no ties in your very illustrious career. You've had 3 title shots. You're the only person in UFC history that's fought in 4 weight classes, which is crazy. And you were the runner-up on the very first season of The Ultimate Fighter. It's pretty amazing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Did your homework.
I've tried. The reason that this was so exciting for me, and honestly the reason that I was having trouble sleeping last night, I have been weak in my life. I'm not ashamed of that. It's certainly not a bright point in my life, but I think everybody struggles from time to time. You get down, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I've been weak, I've whined, woe is me, I felt sorry for myself, and this morning was actually one of those times. So I didn't get a good night's sleep, was really excited about doing the show, and so I wanted to be super fresh.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured, hey, I'm up, it's 2:30 in the morning, I've got a gym that I can access at that time, so I started hitting the gym, and I was just feeling super lazy, and then I remembered you. And I started thinking, what if instead of asking, what's the least I can do, I start asking, what's the most I can bear? And if I start asking, what's the most I can bear, will that change the dynamic of my workout? And it did, and it really flipped it. And it was one of those, I put on a different song, it was just, it had that sort of inspirational vibe. I was thinking about you and some of the things that you've done, which we're gonna talk in detail about. And then just got back to work. And that was like, just saying, I'm gonna get back to work and I'm gonna start asking what's the maximum load that I can carry right now today. And that changed everything. You had a defining moment that changed everything for you, that led you to live a life of passion, and that was a fateful trip that you took in Brazil.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
At the time, I was working a full-time job that I was not happy about, or it didn't move me, it didn't fulfill me. I was translating financial documents in various languages and whatever, and you know, I had this other thing that I really wanted to do, and that was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's really what moved me. That's what kind of really got me up in the morning, you know, that's what motivated me to work hard. And I was on this trip in Brazil, on a training trip, kind of away from work, just focusing on training, and we were climbing up this beautiful mountain where you get to the top, you see all of Rio de Janeiro, Gavia Rock, and we were climbing, and we decided to kind of go off the path a little bit. And it was slippery, and you know, there was some moss or whatever, and my friend had slipped descending down the mountain, and it was pretty treacherous. I mean, there were some cliffs, and it was very steep and very dangerous and pretty dumb going down. So we definitely should have stuck to the path, or maybe we shouldn't have, because I was the next guy to slip. And I slipped, and I was going feet first down this kind of ledge, like sliding down the mountain. And my buddy had grabbed me. I had this tank top on, and he had a hold of my tank top and grabbed me, but the momentum kept swinging me down the mountain. And now I was going head first down the mountain. All of a sudden, I just felt air, and I was just dropping. I saw my whole life flash before my eyes, and I remember just feeling a sadness as I was kind of just descending down the mountain in the air, flying down the mountain. And I had always had this reoccurring dream as a kid of falling for whatever reason. And heights always scared me. And I remember saying, well, this is the way it's gonna happen. That sucks. And I remember just feeling very sad and thinking about, man, there was so much I wanted to do. There was so much stuff that I wanted to accomplish. And I just remember feeling this overall sadness. Dropped and fell onto a rock on a ledge, and it was a small ledge. If I hadn't fallen on that rock, it was like a rounded rock. First of all, it didn't hit my head somehow. tucked and kind of like slapped out, almost like I would in jiu-jitsu. And I don't know if that saved me or not, but when I landed, it woke me up, and my first reaction, I actually started laughing because I was like, oh my God, I'm alive. And my friends, I remember hearing them, they're like, he's dead, that's it, he's gone. And I was like, nope, I'm down here, I can't really move, but I'm down here. And they came down, I got up, and we all quietly kind of walked down the mountain, got back on the path, and no one really said anything.
Now,
they knew I was lucky.
Was that the initial feeling, was just luck, or did you know right then, like, whoa, a fundamental shift has happened in my mind?
A definite fundamental shift, and it kept getting more and more intense. I remember as each day passed, I kept thinking about that. I just couldn't get that experience out of my mind. Imagine if that's the way I went out in a different country, and not kind of pursuing what I really wanted to do. Like, that's crazy. I went back home, I gave my 2-week notice and said, I have to do this martial arts thing. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but this is what I have to do.
You taking that first step, right? Why does it require that you fall off a cliff? Like, really, why does it require that? And for me, I went through a similarly stupid, thankfully safer, but much more drawn out. It took me 8.5 years to finally hit emotional rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
You maybe got there a lot faster because you realized how precious life was in that moment. But for me, it took a long time. Finding some sort of way to distill that for people in a way that they can hear and that they're affected by, so that they take action, that is why you're here today.
It's a great question, and I think that it comes down to listening to that God-given, or whatever it is, natural intuition.
When you say intuition, how does that manifest?
I
voice
think
in your
that
head,
since the time we're born, we're told we're cute, we're short, we're tall, we're whatever, We're just inundated with all these thoughts and all these ideas, and our parents want us to do a certain thing, and our teachers want us to be a certain way, but we're all different. And I think that my decision to go the martial arts route was my fast track to finding myself and doing what really moved me and what fulfilled me. And I think that many times we take these paths that are someone else's footsteps or someone else's idea.
You actually have a really cool quote that I wrote down which says exactly that. We're all so unique and take different paths, but sometimes in someone else's footsteps.
Yeah, there you go.
And that really jumped out at me, and so I wrote it down because people think they're living their life, right?
Yes.
But then when you analyze it and it so clearly mimics somebody that's had massive influence in their life, and that influence hasn't always been inspiration. Like, it's one thing if somebody's walking in your shoes because they were inspired by you gave them a clear picture of that sort of nebulous thing that was inside them. Now they could see it. Yes, those are the footsteps that I want to walk in. But all too often it's the footsteps, like with your own story, where your parents wanted you to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the footsteps that they had laid out for you. They were professionals, both doctors. Your dad was a heart surgeon, right? How do you help people, or what can you say to help people distinguish their own footsteps from someone else?
I'm not going to say that you shouldn't listen to anybody. You absolutely should listen to those who have good information. But as soon as someone starts telling you what you need to be doing and it's not aligned with your kind of core values, I think that's when you kind of have to not listen to those people. And I think we all know that. And I think a lot of that is finding that sense when you're a kid. And I remember going back and when I was a kid, whatever it was, physically, I had to do something physical with my body. I just knew that's what got me excited. That's what got me, interested and being outside and learning about myself and pushing myself physically. And I noticed that had a direct relation to how I use my brain as well. And I think that I kind of lost sense of that. And as I moved away from soccer or other things that I was doing physically, I noticed that mentally I would be regressed. I wouldn't be able to function as well.
How old are you at this point?
I was probably, as I was going through high school, I noticed that, I don't know, I just needed more physical, exertion. I needed to, exercise more, and I just wasn't doing it as much. I felt like,
But you actually felt a psychological connection to that?
Yes.
Like, as I back off the
Absolutely.
physical?
Even when I do martial arts,
Wow.
I felt a different connection as a kid. I felt like I was doing something that was so special, that was so beyond anything else, that nothing else mattered, even when I was doing karate as a kid. For whatever reason, I don't know why. I don't know why that was, but I felt a definite connection and like a peace. When I was playing soccer, when I was, sitting in class or whatever it was, I was very jittery. I was very, I just couldn't sit still. And I noticed that the only thing that gave me peace or gave me kind of a connection to my body and my mind and everything was martial arts for whatever reason. And I lost sense of that. And as I got into college, I saw the first UFC and I said, that is fascinating. What this skinny Brazilian guy just did and beat all these monsters, that is amazing.
Royce when he
Gracie.
first came on the scene,
exactly.
yeah.
And that's what I kind of wanted to learn. And as soon as I did the first day, I knew this was something different. Again, I felt that connection again. And I think I would tell people I want to do jiu-jitsu. And my parents or my girlfriend or whoever was in my life at the time, they go, well, that's cool, but how are you going to make money?
Right.
How are you going to do it? What are you going to do with that? And I started saying, yeah, Kenny, what are you going to do with that? That's silly. Why would I do that? But I knew that's what was moving me. That's where my passion was. And I think it was that listening to myself and ignoring the fact that I was 28 years old, doing my first mixed martial arts fight and becoming a professional fighter at that age, which was, pretty unheard of and pretty crazy, pretty drastic career change, going from, I was going to law school, but now I'm going to fight in a cage. That makes total sense, But that's what I did. And I think that was my path of really finding myself. It was life magnified, I think, because of everything that you experience in fighting, testing yourself, finding out about your limits, dealing with the emotional struggles of winning and losing and, pushing yourself day after day after day. You find out a lot about yourself and what your capabilities are and what your deficiencies are and how those deficiencies aren't really deficiencies, but maybe just little hurdles for you to get to another level.
Yeah, it's interesting, talking about intuition. I'm going to throw out some really terrible stats, and they're all off, but they'll be ballpark right.
Sure.
Something like 90% of the brain processes that you go through are non-conscious. So, fascinating example of some people with short-term memory loss. So people that can't form new memories, like Memento, the movie. Real study. A guy does what is sort of unethical, although I'm so grateful that he did it because it gives us such a fascinating glimpse. But he would go in and he would see this woman every day, and every day she wouldn't remember him. Now, she can remember her distant past, but she can't remember anything from the time that she sustained this brain injury. Can't remember anything. So it'd be, hi, I'm Tom, nice to meet you. Leave the room for 3 minutes and come back. You have to start all over.
Who are you? Yeah.
So one day he put a thumbtack in his hand and he shook her hand and he leaves the room, she forgets all about it. He comes back and goes to shake her hand and she won't do it. Now she's not faking. She really can't form new memories.
Yeah.
But there's a part of her brain that's detached from traditional memory formation that remembers the avoidance of that pain. And when she was asked, why won't you shake my hand? Ooh, doctors in lab coats, I just have a thing about not shaking their hand, which is obviously total BS. But it just hints at all the things that are going on that you're not aware of. I bring all of that up because watching your career, the reason that I really am into UFC, the reason you stand out to me, and you're gonna hate this. And so please understand, it is with true gratitude that I say this. You have taught me so much by the way you've responded to your losses. You wouldn't be as interesting to me, certainly, if you'd never lost. Because we wouldn't have gotten to see how your mind responds to failure. And you talk a lot about how there's really two types of fighters. There's a hard-nosed, tough head, tattoo-covered, animal. He comes into the cage and he's there to fucking tear somebody apart. Then there's you. You come in, you're very cerebral. You're executing formulas. Your words, not mine, which I always found that fascinating. Tell me about that.
That's one thing that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu truly taught me, that there are formulas, there are techniques. You just need to make it second nature, so your body just responds.
All right, what were the formulas for Jiu-Jitsu? To give us one.
The use of leverage, the idea of using someone else's energy against them, the idea of thinking a few moves ahead and not just kind of seeing it as it is. And there, it goes back to also intuition, listening to yourself, just finding those tells. And I don't even know if it comes down to figuring out how to do it. I think we're born with that. I think we instinctively know how to do certain things. You know, if you think about, you know, you were talking about the instinct, you know, the instinct of not wanting to shake the hand after that. How did the brain figure that out? It just knew. And I think that we actually learn improper ways of responding. We get so out of ourselves, I think, that we don't utilize our true gifts. And I think that, you know, if it's listening to someone else or you know, just not having the time to look inward. And I think that we forget about that, you know. And I go back to when I was a kid, and I grew up in a big family, but I always needed time to go off by myself, whether it was exploring in the woods or kind of hiding out, pretending I was a ninja or whatever it was, just kind of being by myself, because you look inwardly and you learn about yourself. You learn about kind of what moves you. And I think a lot of times we kind of look for, you know, the advice of friends and family and people or whatever, but it's rare that we actually listen to ourselves. And whether it's meditation or kind of just getting time for yourself and yourself alone. And I think the world would be a much better place because, you know, our intuition, our instincts become way more human, way more natural, I think. And I think we get so far away from that. And I think when you talk about helping other people, it's not a selfish thing in looking inward and kind of taking care of yourself. But how can you take care of yourself if you yourself are not healthy, if you yourself aren't even, you know, aware of what you are passionate about or what you enjoy? And I don't think you're able to help people as much if you're not caring about yourself and if you're not aware of your strengths and weaknesses and likes and dislikes. And I think that kind of will create a chain reaction, you know, and help everyone, I think. You know?
All right, you talked about looking in yourself and really taking the time to do that, and you said, I don't think people really take the time to do that, and I think you're probably right. I think, though, there's an even more distressing second part, which is if 80% of the people just never take time to do it, the 20% of people that actually do it, there's still only maybe 5% that get something out of that introspection. My gut instinct is you have an amazing ability to look within yourself like your life depended on it. You're looking for a real answer that can be measured. It can be associated to a metric and a goal, and you can see, okay, am I getting closer to this or not? Is fighting for you, is it metaphorical or is it literal?
Jeez. You know, I guess it's metaphorical. You know, I think that, first of all, we are all fighting in some way, shape, or form. You know, just to be here where we are, we had to fight in some way, shape, or form. And even when we go back in history, of course, you know, our ancestors and their ancestors, just to survive, it's amazing that we're here. It's amazing how much we've evolved. But we still have a lot to go. And maybe we haven't evolved in the right way, if you think about it. But when you talk about fighting, I always see it as it's a way that has really magnified life and it's sped it up for me, sped up the learning process about myself and what I'm capable of doing. And I think that I lived a life that was very safe, if I'm being honest, was very safe.
When you were younger?
When I was younger, you know, I didn't come from a broken home. I didn't come from a poor family. You know, financially, economically, I had everything that I needed for the most part. But I wasn't really living. And I think living comes down to learning and getting out of your comfort zones. We can evolve, you know, yeah, we can be safe and just stay in one room all the time and have our food delivered to us and do all these things that are safe and nothing ever happens, but that's not living. There is nothing great that happens without struggle. There just isn't. You know, if you think about lifting weights or working out, there's soreness that happens, there's struggle. It's annoying, it's tiring, it's fatiguing. But over time, we become stronger. And if you think about it, you know, everything that happens, you know, there has to be this sometimes violent change. But in the end, we're better for it. And I think that's kind of what we need to do. And it doesn't mean, you know, going on a suicide mission every single day, but it does mean testing yourselves and testing your capabilities in all aspects, you know, mentally, physically, spiritually, really testing yourself and who you are.
I'm going to say something that's going to make you inherently uncomfortable, but I want you to...
Oh, I love being uncomfortable. We were just talking about that.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. You've just armed
Getting
me very
comfortable
well.
with the uncomfortable, yeah.
So you've said, and it certainly interests me a lot, you've said I put a ton of preparation into doing the color commentary. Like I work just as hard at that as I do being a fighter, and maybe I'm not getting punched in the face, but the intellectual effort is on the same level, and that's just how I do everything. As I was going through your notes, I'm the same way. So I was going in and I was reading everything I could find about you. I've obviously seen your fights, watched The Ultimate Fighter, the very first season that it was on. So even just from way back then, you'd really been on my wife and I's radar as somebody who was interesting because you could speak about it, you could articulate it. But as I was going through your notes, I realized you have found the meaning of life. I say that with all the sincerity in the world. I'm gonna say it super succinctly because I've had time to think of it in that wrapper. But reading on you, watching your life, watching you embrace and speak very publicly on a notion that is so dear to my heart and really is culturally here at Quest is one of the most important things. There's winning and there's learning. Yeah. And that for you, it wasn't a distinction between sometimes I win and sometimes I lose. It was sometimes I win and sometimes I learn. There's a book, by the way. Have you read that book?
No.
As I was going through your notes, I'm like, wow, it's amazing when two great people really stumble on the same thing. As John Maxwell, I believe is his name, wrote a book called Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. So, and it brings it back, why fighting is so fascinating to me is because it is so metric-based, it's so goal-oriented. There is a guy, he's trying to punch you and kick you in the face! Yeah. And it's like, if what you've learned doesn't work, you're really in trouble.
Yes.
All right, so for me, to distill it down, the purpose of life is to see how many skills you can acquire that have utility. And it's that second part, that have utility, that made it so interesting. So one of the questions I was originally going to ask you, and I no longer feel like I need to ask, but one of the original questions was, what are you trying to prove, right? You talk so often about, I want to be tested, I want to be tested. Things were handed to me. When they're handed to me, meaning because you grew up in a very stable family, we'll say, economically not challenged. You put yourself in an environment where everything you were learning was being tested in a dangerous environment. Yeah. Like people's number one fear is public speaking. Where people may laugh at you, right? Getting laughed at sucks, but I'm gonna guess getting kicked in the face sucks a lot more.
In front of other people.
Yeah. Who are laughing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, your learnings just got put to the test in such a fascinating way, such a real and visceral way. I've got to imagine that you've carried a lot forward in your life. What are some of the lessons that you've learned in fighting that you feel applied directly to the outside world?
Well, I think we all need a sense of accomplishment. It's funny, my wife and I, we just rescued a dog, and this little dog, this little Chihuahua we saw maybe 8 dogs. The only dog that bit me was this dog, and that's the dog I chose. Trying to use my intuition, I said, he's actually a good dog. We brought him home. And he was so fearful. And what I just started doing was just trying to reward him for things and giving him little accomplishments. We'd go for a walk, and we'd give him a treat, and we'd get him to do little things and start to build his confidence. And I think he's now a completely different dog in like a month. He's a totally different dog because he has a sense of accomplishment. He has a sense of that, he has a home now. He's got a place where he is. He's got people that love him. He feels a little bit more confident because he's able to achieve little things. He gets little rewards, and he's working for those things. And I think that sense of accomplishment is huge. And I think that we don't feel that. I don't think we sit back and are thankful for what we're doing, or we're just not doing important things or cool things. And I think that's what it comes down to, is that we're living kind of boring lives. And we're not doing things that are exciting. We're not doing things that are helping others. We're not doing things that are fulfilling us. And I think that we're all lost. A lot of us are lost because of that. And I think that in learning a technique and beating someone for the first time with an arm lock that I learned, another guy who is trying his best to not let that happen, and I made it happen for myself, That's a great feeling. Through the blood, sweat, and tears that I've been doing, putting in every single day, I finally got this one guy who was beating me before, and now I'm beating him. And it's not about beating him, but it's more about me and what I can accomplish with my own body if I work hard at something.
If you were going to make the movie starring Ben Stiller of your life, one of the themes, I promise you, that would be at the absolute center of that is hard work pays off. Like, if I can just make it as trite as possible, hard work pays off.
It does.
And I'm gonna relentlessly self-assess.
Yeah.
Right? I'm gonna look, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What's working? What's not working? Because, dude, the season finale to Tough should have been the end of your career.
Yeah.
For a lesser mortal, that's it.
Yep.
There's no emotionally coming back from that. Ever. I have the chills.
Yeah.
The fact that you could pick yourself up emotionally from that moment and rebuild, someone who goes on to fight for the title 3 times after that was incredible. And all the stuff that you did with the mind. Walk us through, like, how do you rebuild a mind like that?
You know, it's tough. I think you need to take yourself out of the situation and realize that there's something bigger there, right? There's something bigger than the competition and the wins and the losses.
Are these literally the words running through your head at the time?
Yeah. Well, you know, the first 24 hours, it's misery, it's depression, it's feeling sorry for yourself and saying sorry to everyone around you. If, you know, your coaches, I'm sorry. It shouldn't have gone that way. I'm sorry. That was like 1 minute and 40 seconds. I shouldn't have lost like that to Diego Sanchez. But after a while, you stop feeling sorry for yourself and you go, okay, let's look at this. Did I do everything to be at his level and actually beat him? My answer was no. I didn't. So when you look at it factually, I didn't deserve to win. Did
that answer empower you or demotivate you?
In some ways it motivated me a tremendous amount, but I needed to work hard because physically I wasn't super strong. And when you got someone who's training to beat you up every day, it's pretty good motivation. You know, you got to be on your toes.
Are you more interested in winning or are you more afraid of losing?
It became both. I'm not sure I completely mastered that balance of maybe not worrying about one or the other. I tried to kind of not worry about winning and not worry about losing and just focus on myself. You know, I'm not sure if I had the right approach in some ways. Sometimes, you know, we were talking about intuition. Sometimes I feel like I ignored my intuition a little bit when I was training or when I was fighting. Of not
What was your intuition saying?
You know, sometimes, let's say I would stick to a game plan so much and I'd be so caught in this analysis and strategic approach that I didn't kind of listen to myself and just adapt and allow my body to just execute on things. Right. Sometimes I was like, okay, I have to do this and I have to, you know, utilize my jab to keep him on the outside and then I'm gonna circle away and then I'm gonna, you know, sprawl. And if you're worrying about all those things, then you're gonna have that paralysis through analysis. And I felt like there was aspects of fights where I really did utilize my intuition. I was in the zone. Like, there were fights where I don't even remember. I just remember getting my hand raised, and I was like, "Whoa, what happened? That was crazy." And
now, are you familiar with Csikszentmihalyi?
No.
So, flow state, obviously in
I've heard of flow
sports,
state.
the zone.
Yes.
And you've talked a lot about the Japanese word, which I don't know how to say, but mushin.
Mushin, yes, exactly. Yeah, of no mind. You know, the idea that you can get to this, you can kind of tap into this flow and just go and just let your body kind of perform. Now, there needs to be an insane amount of repetitions, an insane amount of training that where your body goes to that default, where it just executes on things without even realizing it. And I think that comes down again to your intuition and looking inwardly. You know, I think so many times we look to the world for advice and ideas, but I think we have everything. We really do have everything we need. We just need to get in touch with that again, and whether it's meditation or whatever.
Well, so I'll call BS on that a little bit. I think you mean maybe the raw things we need to mold and shape, but as somebody who knows it's all about reps and how much hard work you have to do.
You need help. There's no doubt. We all need help. I don't want to say that it's just ourselves, but taking the skills and taking ideas, but then kind of putting it into your own world and figuring out for yourself. I think there's tremendous value in that.
There's one thing that I would be remiss if we didn't talk about, and that's Firas Zahabi. What was the impact that he had on you? Because he had a big impact on me.
You know, Firas was awesome. You know, when I lost to BJ Penn for the belt at 155 pounds, he called me after the fight, and he said, "Hey, Kenny, I just want to let you know, anything you need, if you ever want to come up and train with us, it'd be awesome to have you. This is my assessment, if you want to hear it, of why you lost. And he broke it down, blah, 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 blah. And he was absolutely right, because I had done it probably 2 days before that, looking at the fight. And, he was looking at anything and everything to make you better. Yeah. It wasn't just this kind of limited view of this is the way, Just the fact that he came from such an open mindset was huge. And for martial artists, it's almost unheard of, because guys get so stuck in this mentality and they walk around with blinders on and they only see what's in front of them. And I think Firas was exploring techniques that everyone would say, like, man, karate never works, man. Like, karate, no. You got to do Muay Thai, and you got to do Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling. That's the only thing you should do. And Firas didn't shut any of that out. He's like, well, actually, there's great techniques. You can't just shut up a whole system because some of the other... He would bring in techniques from everywhere. When you're stuck in an ideology or a mindset, you only think within that realm. You only think within that mindset. But if you don't have any ideologies, if you don't have any kind of structures, the world is yours. You'd see anything for how it is.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, and I know that I'm running the risk of repeating myself, but this is so important, and I see so many people succumb to this. You failed, yes, but you are not a failure, and you could see the difference. You could see that one is temporary and one is permanent. So in understanding that, okay, that sucked, but I can move on, you rebuilt yourself and came back, and it actually scares me to think how many people have whatever the equivalent is of that kind of moment where it's a defeat that you don't feel good about. And then that comes to define their personality, right? That becomes the narrative that they tell themselves about themselves.
Sometimes you see these things that are, oh my gosh, it's so tragic that these things happen, but it only allowed for further growth in another area. If that thing didn't happen, then we wouldn't learn from that, or it wouldn't have spawned this thing or that thing. So I think it's a very natural and organic process that we look at these failures as failures, and like, well, that's it. I can't go that direction. That's it. It's that's a roadblock. And I think it always comes down to mindset. And if you have a positive mindset and you surround yourself with positive people, I think that you see those things as just hurdles and not roadblocks. And I think it's so easy to fall into that and be like, well, I tested my limits and that was scary. I'm just going to go back here. It's a dangerous thing. I used to laugh at people and talk about, oh, you can spread your energy to other people. But it's actually a real thing. I really do believe that. That if you talk to someone who's a very negative person, kind of leave that conversation or that person kind of a little bit down as well. And you accept that energy. But if you're around positive people, I think that spreads. And if you think about the chain reaction that happens from that, it really is very beneficial. And I think it's important to be a positive person yourself, because you will never see roadblocks. You'll see just little hurdles. And I think it also helps spread that outward, and people start to become way more positive and kind of learn from your vibe and learn from your energy. So.
Well, Kenny, thank you very much for being on the show today. I really am grateful for your time, man. It's awesome. The way that you view the world is super inspirational. The fact that you've lived out in the public eye and we've been able to see and learn from the things that you're doing, and obviously bringing to bear the talents that you were acquiring, not just the talents that you were born with, which makes it all that much more tangible for everybody else, which is why I think you will continue to be a beacon of inspiration for a lot of people for a very long time. Guys, if you haven't already subscribed to Inside Quest, be sure to do so here. It's a weekly show, so come back next week and check out who we've got for you. In the meantime, be sure that you're putting Kenny's lessons to the test. They will do you well, I promise. Take care, guys. Thank you, man. Absolutely fantastic. And I think we finally got it. It really is. Yeah.